We're going to start, as always, with item 1 to receive apologies for absence.
Absent, Councillor Yates, Councillor Coyley, and Councillor Mortimer may be late.
Okay, so moving on to item 2 to note declarations of members' interests. All good?
Okay.
That's all right. So then item 3 to only just started.
Your 30 seconds late.
Yeah.
No worries. So item 3 to confirm and sign the minutes Public Services Committee meeting held on the 5th of November 2024. So is anyone opposed? Seconded? Everyone not in favour? That's okay. Anyone against? Anyone absent?
Abstention.
Thank you. Yes, in that case. Sure. 28th.
Oh my God, sorry.
There you go.
Thank you.
No worries. Right then, item 4, public participation. A period not exceeding 15 minutes for members of the public to ask questions or submit comments in relation to published agenda items. Do we have any?
We don't have any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now on to item 5 to note the year-to-date financial position of the Public Services Committee.
I don't think I have any comments to make different from last time, so I don't know whether if there are any questions from members about the budget.
So happy to note.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so item 6 is to receive an update on progress and consider matters relating to the business delivery plan for 2024-2025.
Thank you. So, delivery plan. Obviously, we're 3/4 of the way through the financial year now, and most of the delivery plan covers that time span, with a few exceptions where we've put two years together, or where we have an earmarked reserve. Just going through plan as is. Just find my notes. You don't have to bear with me for 1 second. There have been recent developments. If we look at CCTV, I was asked to purchase or agree purchase of a camera for Samuel Street play area. That was using earmarked reserves, and that camera has been purchased and installed, which hopefully will have some positive impact on reducing ASB and support the new developments as the investments made in that part. I've put into the report a request to allocate some of our ranger services to augment the existing service. We've had issues with recruitment, therefore we've not paid the full allocation of budget this year for ranger service. We're going through that process again at the moment, looking for a new ranger. So in the meantime, we have a job just planting up some planters for the Victoria Centre, which we purchased a little while ago. That's a bit more of a skilled job and needs a bit of thought around planting scheme. I've asked Panzer if they can do that, so we just use their services and buy that using some of our ranger budget, which otherwise we would have given that job to the rangers to do. Cleaner Crew, as you know, the project in this financial year is not going to happen. Therefore, we will not be spending £35,000. That will go back into reserves at the end of this financial year. So that's highlighted in red, but we have a new project starting, and there's a report on that further through the agenda. In addition to that, allotments, the budget's pretty well spent and covered. The clerk and I have some further meetings with allotment holders over the next month or so, where we've not yet done inspections. We'll carry out inspections and have that engagement with the allotment holders. but so far everyone seems to be happy. We've done the maintenance work on the boundaries and trees, etc. Now, in terms of public realm, the repaint and the maintenance work agreed with Orbitas has been completed, so everything's done. They're just going to review the time allocated and costs for this final round of funding, and we'll just look then if there's any surplus and anything else they can do within this financial year. But they've pretty much done what we asked them to do, which was to complete the scheme and then to go back to repaint the blue seats. There were 11 of those metal blue seats around the town. In addition to that, we have some further jobs under discussion for maintenance, which unfortunately need the support or agreement with Cheshire East Council. So, in particular, with highways around repairing and replacing tree pits. There are some raised grid type old tree pit covers around the town, which are a safety issue. So the approach I've taken with them is if they replace those tree pit covers and work with us, we will match what they do with the other pits around town. So the process that I've suggested, which they think is the best way forward, is to take all those grids out, because you've got a lot of heave under the trees and that's why they're uneven, you've got roots coming up, etc. And to use a resin bound aggregate to fill those pits so they're nice and neat and they're no longer cigarette traps, which they are at the moment. And it won't damage the health of the trees because they allow water through and we're not going to suffocate them. So that's what we're talking about doing, and hopefully when I have my meeting with them next month, they'll have come round and agreed to that and we can get on. But please just be aware that we may have budget that we cannot actually physically spend in this financial year. We may just need to carry it over into the next. I will report on that at the next meeting. Another area for repairs is the heritage light. It's known as the 3 lamps, but it's actually got 4 on it, which is in the middle of Market Street. Again, discussions over a period of a few years with highways on that matter. They've now found a supplier who can work within their framework to do the work. They've costed it with some proviso. The lamp would have to be removed from the site to be taken away and fully assessed and repaired, but they've got some costs to do the work. It would also involve support from conservation. In the meantime, Cheshire East Council's Regen team have also been looking at exactly that project and a few others. So in order to make the best use of our funds, I might take a few more conversations to work out who can best fund what within the envelope of this year. So I'm asking for approval here to make the decisions on where we put our funds from this financial year in consultation, obviously, with the chair and the clerk, just to deliver those improvements. So that's public realm. We also have regeneration projects funding, which, if you remember, you agreed to focus on the suspended display over Hill Street. Now, that was approved in November, so I wrote a request for quotations. We've had 2 submissions back for that, and I just need to give that a look over and then refer back to the steering group this week to see what their view is on that. Hopefully that should be delivered by the end of March, but if it isn't, just please be aware we may need an EMR just for a few weeks to cover that, because we don't want to pay a commercial business for something before it's finally delivered. Equally, in terms of the artwork at the bus station, the RFQ went out and I have a number of submissions. So again, they were completed on Friday and I'm just now putting that into an order to send out to the steering group to give their view on which artists they would like to commission to do that work on the bus station. In addition to that, we have the Keep On Keeping On project, which is one which I presented to members last year, and we'll hold an EMR of £5,000, which is match funding. We were waiting for the final Arts Council response to that application. That's been approved by Arts Council, so that project should be coming to crew for performances in May. We've had the initial meetings with the UTC. We'd already had discussions with them. That project is now live. So today they had a professional stage designer in with 15 students going through the script and working out the brief for the set design. They will help to design the set, so it's a real working experience for them. And once the design is finalised, they will then be asked to construct part of the set, and they will get involved in the technical rehearsals and see the final performance piece of Keep On Keeping On, which is a play about Northern Soul, the people who are involved in the Northern Soul scene and where they are now in life. So it's a great production. Now, some people might know Northern Soul, some people might not. I did send a link out last year. If anybody wants any more information, please let me know and I'll share that. In relation to that project, so we've committed £5,000 to bring the play to crew. The team who are producing it have now set up a production company specifically for this project. So I now have to get a grant agreement for £5,000. And the company is called Northern Soul Productions. But there will also be a workshop led by a member of the Institute of Place Management, a gentleman called Ian Nicholson, who's also working on the Repurposing the High Street project. And he will hold a workshop with local retailers. And it's to talk about the High Street, what they feel is needed, what they feel the issues are around the High Street. There'll also be a careers day to which students will be invited to meet people working in theatre and design, and we've just been discussing that today. And we'll be encouraging the sort of creative community around Crewe and neighbouring areas to come into that conversation as well. So it's a way of boosting the sort of cultural economy around the place. And so my question to you today is, to include in our delivery plan, would you like to enhance that with any other augmentation, any other activities? So I've put some suggestions to you there about things we could do. We've got a performance going on in an empty shop in the town centre over a few days. Would you like to bring in, for example, a bit of a dance off in the town centre with Northern Soul DJs and maybe some modern DJs playing as well? And that's happened successfully in other places, could be indoors or outdoors. So would you like to commission some work around that? Are there other activities you think that you'd like to support? I've given some examples there with the dancing on the carpet in Blackpool, or the dance company that we brought in for Knife Angel, or some artwork in shop windows or vinyls, anything of that sort of ilk. We'd like to consider it. And I think, check my notes, that's it. So the considerations are around extending that project and noting where we may need to make some changes and in supporting investments as outlined.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of considerations, what I'll do is I'll just go down each one in turn, so that way we know where we are at. First one is just to note the report. So if everyone's happy with the report, yes, thank you very much for that report. And then also to note the contribution of £5,000 to Northern Soul Productions Limited. Happy to note that?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So therefore it's part 3 of item 6, then to provide a view, a recommendation regarding extending additional funds to keep on keeping on project. So does anyone got any thoughts or recommendations? Yes, Councillor.
I like the thought of the dance off, weather permitting, and presumably it would be on Phil Marks and Spencer Square until the work's finished out here.
Or it could be on Lyceum Square.
Ah, right, yes, of course. Okay, yeah. What I was wondering was, because those of us who indulged in such joyous occasions are getting a bit thin on the ground now, perhaps it might be a time to put a feeler out there for people who were Northern Soul aficionados. I know they still have an all-dayer at
Yes.
the co-op, at the Working Men's Club
Mhm.
on Bradfield Road.
Yeah.
And there are others dotted around Winsford and places like that who people from Crewe regularly attend. So I was thinking it might be nice to get the same sort of little booklet put together that we had for Change at Crewe all those years ago. People putting their memories, why they come to Crewe, how they ended up in Crewe. And this sort of memories of youngsters who aren't quite as young anymore but still enjoy the music, where they used to go. Because not everybody used to go to Wigan, you know, it wasn't the be-all.
No.
In fact, Stoke had more Northern Soul clubs than Wigan did, that's for sure. So just a thought there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Gil.
Fascinating. I have heard of this. But is it the sort of thing that can be actually publicised beforehand? Or seeking ideas from the public about what they might like to see, as well as putting forward that suggestion that was just been made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since Northern Soul is bound to be popular in support of young and old, right? Why not? Why not put this out there and something that people might actually like? How would you? What would you do to extend all this? There's some help may be available from the town council, because you may as well capitalise on that and get some goodwill, as well as perhaps set up some decent events that people enjoy.
Yes.
Gives it a sense of ownership, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, so we can do that if you're happy to. But if that's something you'd like to do, and then let's come back to the next meeting with some actions.
Brilliant. Okay. So then part 4 is to approve allocation of budget of £3,000 for augmentation of the range of services to design, install and maintain the Victoria Square planters. So has anyone got any questions there before we do a propose?
Yeah. So is that linked to the item about the Ranger service earlier on?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Where we're basically one person down.
Yes.
So basically it's a top up. So it's filling the gap.
Yeah.
Well, I would be happy to move that one.
So proposed. Seconded. Thank you. All those in favour?
No, thank you.
Okay. And then part 5, in order to expedite repairs as soon as possible, to delegate decisions regarding expenditure of the public realm budget line. Yes, 307471, and the town centre capital projects EMR to the public services manager in consultation with chair and town clerk. So it's just in terms of delegation, you just want to. What's the question?
Project line 307471.
No, of course. So in terms of split realm, we have about £12,000, but also earmarked reserve. We allocated 14,000 to the streetlight, and it's just getting that balance really.
Which streets?
The heritage light, Victorian street lights.
Oh,
Any other questions about that?
We delegated to in consultation with the chair and town clerk. So presumably the chair was the as the pinnacle of the membership of this committee will invite any suggestions that might come forward from members, and then they can be taken on board. So whatever, even if members get some ideas from elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, this is physical ownership.
Yes, it is. So I have highlighted the sort of repairs that we would cover. Shall we just go through that?
Yeah.
Might just help. So the items that we discussed previously, put my teeth back in, with the heritage light, Banners on Earl Street I raised previously, but I'm sorry, I omitted to say that the bid would like to replace those. They'd like to take that on as a project, so I wouldn't ask for us to fund that. There are a mix of various old planters, and so we could easily replace some this year. Some of them, I believe, were bins. It turns out they weren't originally planters, the black ones. So if we have a little bit of money left out of this overall, we could use that. And then we've got the damage and uneven paving and redundant tree pits. And I would suggest the tree pits are more critical than paving at this stage. So they were the items that I've referred to all through these meetings. But if there's anything else that you've noticed that you would like to nominate, then let's make that note.
Yes, Councillor.
You haven't mentioned the decorative features on Chester Bridge. Now, I don't know whether that has been mentioned at a previous meeting where I haven't been.
No,
But
I've not really focused on that any further. There's some wrought iron work, but it's small amounts of repairs, whereas we could easily spend the budget we have on the bigger repairs.
Okay.
If you would like me to put a bit more focus on that, I certainly can. It's finding some or having some new pieces moulded. You know, the old wrought iron or cast iron work that's along the top of the bridge.
Yeah. No, it's just I was just questioning why you hadn't covered it in there.
Sorry, yes.
Are we open to suggestions for smaller pots of money? Well, I say smaller, it probably won't be, but to be spent, or do we have to wait until next year now? I'm thinking about the Memorial Square, which I did ask Cheshire East about some years ago, and nothing was done. In the ellipse that runs around the square when it was first built, we had the words of Siegfried Sassoon's poem The Aftermath, which is engraved into the ellipse, and it's just the last line, which says, "Swear by the green of the spring that you will never forget." And I noticed on Remembrance Day how badly that is now disappearing. And I wondered if there was any way in which we can have it regouged, if that's even a modern term.
Would you like me, if you'd like me to make inquiries?
Just investigate.
I would say
I appreciate that.
Because there was money set aside for the centenaries, 14 to 80, but it never, that was for memorials per se, not the ground around them. So it would be nice to think, you know, as we go into the 2nd century now, wording out.
So if you'd like, I'll make some inquiries, because I can see that being being something that wouldn't happen in this financial year because of the sort of consultation around it, etc. But I could bring something back and include it in the next meeting.
That's great.
If you would like.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Thing that occurred to me before, if some of the planters are to be replaced, then are we going to recycle the old ones? Because our colleague in Crewe West, Councillor White, can no doubt find a home for some. He's spoken of that before now, hasn't he? Places where they could come in.
Hasn't there been talk of maybe putting it in the likes of using it on West Street, Nantwich Road, some of those areas?
You got plenty of stuff like that in Nantwich Road. I don't know about West Street. There was another area. I'm trying to think where it was. He had a particular area or two in mind. I don't think it was either of the two main sort of retail centres. It was one of the sort of outlying ones, not necessarily say Reedsdale, but one Kennington. I can't remember which one it was.
Oh, was it? Is it Bradfield Road?
I think it
Up
was
that way.
Yeah. So I'll certainly do that. Once we've got things replaced, we'll look to refurbish what we've got, and I'll come out to ask you if you've got suggestions like that.
Sure. Then we'll have some suggestions. Do we have to get permission from somebody to put them on these places? I hope you're not going to use the word highways. But I suppose you will.
It would depend where they are.
Yeah.
So technically, if it's on the put something on the highway. They have chosen to waive that need in the past. And sometimes, of course, where you locate them may be on the business's land, or in a precinct, it may not be technically highway, so it's not always necessarily an issue.
You do tend to find that most of the shopping arcades with the strip of shops, the front part is owned by the owners of the building rather than it's a private land kind of thing. Just gets back some permission, I imagine.
Yeah.
So, going back to just to part 5 in terms of delegating the decisions, you just want to put a proposer and a yeah, happy with that. Second. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, and then all in favour. Oneness. Thank you. Okay, so now to item 7. Is that everything? Yeah. To consider matters related to the Cleaner Crew project.
So, members will be aware that Cheshire East Council has agreed to go ahead with an extension of the Cleaner Crew project. So we had a pilot over a period of a couple of years. That's now going to be restarted as a full project with an extension into 2 new areas of Crewe, one being around the West Street area and the other being the southern side of Nanswich Road, and those areas designated, they're on the maps, and a steering group or project board has been set up by Cheshire East Council. As co-funders of that, we've offered to fund £45,000 in the next financial year towards this project. We've been invited to send 2 representatives. I've been asked by the clerk to go as the officer representative, and in this report I'm asking you to support nomination of Councillor Hogben to represent this committee and to represent the town council, due to his involvement in the Cleaner Crew project so far, but also with his knowledge of the whole waste management issue through experience of being on the board at ANSA. We had a meeting last week with as many ward members as could make it from the affected areas, who were happy in principle with that, but they also made some comments on the proposed project as stands, with some suggestions which I've listed here. There's one I missed, which was to include Frank Webb Avenue, which Councillor Pratt had suggested, but that's in my notes for discussion to include. So on that basis, I'm asking committee to support our involvement in the project with that £45,000, which is already allocated, to make any further recommendations, if you wish at this point, for us to take them to that committee, and also to support nomination of Councillor Hogben to represent you.
So, starting with the part 1, is just to confirm support and funding for the Cleaner Crew project. So, is there any questions before we decide? Any questions? Councillor.
Well, I'm keen to promote propose that.
Keen to ask
where I can, since I can.
Of course, thank you. So that's it. I've got Councillor Hogben to propose. Any questions before we second? Councillor.
I suppose I wasn't at the meeting when this came about, but sort of for the 45,000, what exactly are we getting? Just in brief, but
yes,
it
would be funding an officer. So there are 5 officers involved in the project. 4 of them are 2 of them are enforcement officers, 2 more involved in education and engagement with the community, and 1 project manager. And we've identified that we'll be supporting the funding of the project manager to lead this.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's any further questions about the supporting the project, can I have a second? Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour of support?
Just,
oh, sorry. Councillor.
2 comments on the report.
Please do.
Before we do that. And it's really just to make the observation that the report itself is really good. That actually there was the preliminary meeting a couple of weeks ago, where ward members had a chance to make their input, and as far as I can tell, they're all they're all in there. And if anything's been missed, it's obviously open to anyone to raise those matters, which is later in the recommendation anyway. But I think it does highlight some of the key aspects really quite well. You know, with sort of what areas, what the roles, job description, equipment, budget, processes, and then alligate. It spells out the sort of concerns that really the project board will have to keep an eye on over time. Because the project board itself obviously hasn't got a budget, but it will be overseeing the use of the budget. And I would think in our case, as the town council, the particular interest, if our funding actually covers the project manager, is be focused on that. The Cheshire East will really need that there will be certainly a useful role to play for the town council in helping them to monitor their own enforcement, and of course the education aspect is important. And indeed, it would be fair to just point out, and be one of the two members here before, certainly here before I had anything to do with this town council, who will recall that the town council itself actually underwrote a couple of people some years ago, before the Cleaner Crew project actually was created, to people who undertook that sort of work, and those who are familiar with it will probably know that certainly in the areas like Crewe South, they were very active in and elsewhere. They were very active in knocking on doors, talking to not just tenants but and residents, but landlords as well, and even doing a certain amount of reconnaissance work at unusual times of day. So it would be. I'm sure that Lindsay Lewis would be certainly keeping a close. Would be keen to see how well those education officers perform based on the experience of the town council from the past. And enforcement is something that we all want to see done, because that's the thing that's been lacking so often in Cheshire East. That's really all I have to say on that. But thank you for the opportunity to draw out those matters.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Who's going to administer like the collection of the fines, for example, like fines will go out, but who's actually going to administer? Because that's a cost in itself to actually administer and collect it, etc., etc.
That will be managed by Cheshire East Council. They have the enforcement powers. We don't have any powers to do that, so that will be done by them.
So the enforcement officer will issue the fines, and then it'll go back to their admin department to do all the collecting.
Absolutely. So for the purpose of this project, they'll be working on section 46 of the Environment Act, and that allows for fixed penalty notices rather than fines in the first place. So that those are preset and they'll just be issued, and then if there's a dispute, it will go to court, but it shouldn't need to go to court. No. It should be just issuing, just as you would with a parking.
Yeah, so basically you're saying they've already got the infrastructure anyway, the council, and it's just an additional to deal with us.
It is an additional thing, and obviously there has to be an amount of, you still have to gather the evidence in the same way. You have to be able to prove and document that you've been through the process required, which is to educate, engage, etc. before enforcement.
I was just trying to determine the impact it will actually have. So there's procedures,
there are procedures,
but how will it actually impact in the improvement of the streets is something else. I was just really just working out the real results, what they were likely to be.
Well, you'll receive a report on a quarterly basis on what's been achieved over that period. how many warnings, how
Yeah.
many, because you have to go through that process. You
Oh
can't
yeah,
just
you do.
issue fines. So
I mean,
you'll get that report.
Yeah, I mean, I was basing it really on the fact that a lot of this comes from those who actually are not from Crewe. They're here temporary. So, like, once the fine's been issued, then if they're students, if they're temporary, they're here, etc., they'll be gone. I'm just wondering how much of our work will go just on chasing. You know, that kind of thing. Because I mean, most people, to be fair, are mindful. It's the minority that let everybody down. So I'm just looking at it as a whole from what likely the impact's going to be for this spend, basically.
I think you can only judge that from the results. Bearing in mind there was a project, a pilot project, and a lot of learning from it. I can't. I'm only speaking from my personal opinion, but I can't see that Cheshire East Council would embark on a bigger project without feeling that it had an impact, and supporting that project. And you've got the benefit of what's been learned. There's no doubt a lot of resource that has to go into this, a lot of time, and it's not a matter of a few fines and people stop.
No, absolutely.
It's all the whole process of education around it and engagement and involving the community in setting up the friends groups, and like the alleyways groups have been very successful in Crewe South.
Yeah, I mean, there was obviously a lot of volunteers with the alleyway, so that then kept the momentum going, and there was a definite significant result. That was clear to see for anyone. I was just wondering really that the other side of it, with engaging with estate agents and the like, that it starts at the bottom. So it obviously refers that really as well, because issuing fines is probably the easiest thing to do, but not really always result driven.
I think you need to have a deterrent.
Yeah, you do need to have deterrent, but I think it's got to be something hand in glove, hasn't it? That the estate agents make it aware to them that they'll be fined. What I'm saying is, if it's not at the level of when the agreement is issued, they'll be unaware. This ticket will come and they'll think, oh, what's that all about? And if they're foreign or whatever, they'll just think, oh. So what I'm saying is, like, if you start at the beginning and they are informed that this is the likely action if X, Y, Z, then I think there's a bigger result, which then means Cheshire East doesn't have to go through the process of collecting, because they're aware that it starts always at that level. I
appreciate that. I saw both hands go up here. Do you want to add? Councillor?
Did you want to go first?
You went exactly the same time, so.
Okay. What's the time span from the time when a notice is served? So obviously, if there's rubbish on the street, you've got to look for evidence who put it there, and so on and so on. Let's say that's already been done. So from the time that person is identified as having done the deed, how long does it actually take for notice to be served on that person, and how much leeway are they given before they're actually pursued further if they haven't paid it?
I'm not the expert on the legalities of that, but I can ask that question. But my knowledge from the previous project is that a number of things have to be demonstrated before a fixed penalty notice. So if there is evidence and it appears to be compelling enough, first of all, you have to go through the education process. So all of the properties will be served with a Section 46 notice, and they will all receive that in writing. So that has to happen, that this is an area in which these expectations will be managed and enforced. So you have to demonstrate that that's been done. Then there'll be door knocking. Have you had this? This is what we've sent, blah, blah, blah. So that all has to be evidence that that process has been gone through. If you then start to find that somebody's been fly tipping. If you've got evidence that they've been fly tipping, that may go straight through as a serving a fixed penalty notice, or it may be deemed that more education is required with that person. There may be some reason for it, maybe some discussion over that and some education. Depends, I think, on the severity of what's being done. If it's constantly leaving bins out, there'll be an opportunity to say, look, your bin should have been in back, it needs to go back in. This is where you put it. If you do it again, then we'll have to serve a fixed penalty notice. So there'll be that kind of activity before somebody's collection of the payments. That's the responsibility of Cheshire East Council. I'm not sure internally what their time frame for that is. There'll obviously be a period of time someone's got to make the payment, and there may have to be some follow up. But I'm not qualified to answer it.
So we could be talking months.
You could, and this may take some time to take root, as it did in Crewe South. But you have to have that train of engagement and evidence before you can just start setting fines on people.
And how much help have the cameras been in Crewe South? Because the photographs are still appearing weekly of stuff being dumped in the same place, in the likes of Lord Street, for example.
Yeah. The view has been that where they've been a deterrent, and I know Lord Street didn't have one for a while, and it's back in there. I do know that some cases are still being dealt with, so I may be able to give you a better update after the next meeting to see how those cases have gone. But there has been evidence generated and there has been follow up. I do know that.
So when this is finally in place, we will get regular updates from Cheshire East to this committee to say in the last 3 months, that's how many have been served, this is what we've done, this is the education we've done, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And that then we can compare to the photographs that are coming through of these piles of rubbish and whether they are decreasing or not. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to follow up on that, this Cheshire East paper, which is attached about changes to household waste collection and the outcome, one of the outcomes from this. It does talk about measuring success in the nature key performance indicators. So it refers to those. It talks about formal reporting to members on a quarterly basis, and that presumably means Cheshire East Councils.
It will be to the committee.
It will be to the Environment Committee. So that will be on the public record and available for anyone to go along and challenge, I suppose, at the meeting or through an appropriate councillor. But yeah, there does need to be feedback. But the project board is one means of doing that, seems to me, as a means to feedback. But also, I mean, it was rather interesting somewhere in all the useful paperwork is, excuse me, the draft terms of reference for this book, which are yet to be determined, will probably be done very soon. And it does say, and I think it's quite important, I mean, it gives the names of this core member. There'll be a few names there. I think it's probably 1 or 2 others to be added, especially amongst the borough councils, I would have thought, because it's only got 1 borough council. It needs to have about 5, I think.
I think the idea was to keep it small.
Was it? It's got 1 borough council on there. It's quite interesting though that in a particular meeting invitation I've seen, there's quite a few borough councils with all those wards, because it affects actually South Ward, a bit of West Ward around Flag Lane, and that area, the Brian Roberts area, plus actually quite a big chunk like Alton Street and Gainsborough Road. So it's Crewe South, Crewe West, big lump of Crewe Central, and some of Crewe, some Armagh. So you've got most of the wards of Crewe actually involved. Yeah, it does actually. Obviously, ward members, whether they're borough or town, will want to know, and they're entitled to know, well, how's this going on, because it's a perennial issue, it seems to me. this that people are not interested in anything else. They're probably not interested in waste management generally. Just one other. There's just one. There's a point in the draft terms of reference. Yeah, I think it's quite important. There's about the core membership. It says, we don't have a minimum number for quorum. That's interesting. But it says other attendees will be invited to present on or update on specific items as the need arises. And members at the recent briefing were keen to sort of stress that should be pretty well open what the board is doing, which work is, with the opportunity as necessary to come along. But yeah, I mean, it's got a fairly sizable core membership of Cheshire East Council already. It's probably a small and well-informed town council element. But from my point of view, anyway, I think town council is important. So now, if people have got ideas, or feed them through, or primarily, I would say, feed them to Lindsay, and whoever it is that you expect as your the member representative to take forward, because it's an opportunity to do that. And I think it's intended that board in due course will meet every month, in a virtual way, sometimes face to face. There's a really good opportunity to put stuff in. It could be at any level you like, high level policy, or it could be a simple thing like, well, what's going on down Wick Street. So I think there's a really good opportunity for not just councils, residents and groups. That representation, community engagement is really important in terms of all this.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Right. Anybody else want to add to the conversation or to ask any of the questions?
Might be a silly question, but what happens to the fines that come in? Where does it all go?
That will go to Cheshire East Council, and a proportion of it would be covering the costs of generating those notices. But I believe that any residual can then be reinvested, as it has happened with Kingdom with the littering. I don't think we've ever got to a position where they've had a surplus of funds to do that with. But generally speaking, it gets invested back into the area that it's done.
So we would get 77% of it. Just for us.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Councillor, okay. Right. I know we had a proposed sale before, but can I just confirm proposed and seconded? Thank you very much. So all those in favour of confirming the support and funding for the Cleaner Crew project. Unanimous. And then with the second part to it, that the council is going to be represented on the board by Councillor Steve Hogburn and the Public Service Manager, which is yourself, with additional attendance at meetings made available to other members or community representatives as required. So with that, I just need someone to propose those recommendations for the presentation. Thank you. And seconded? Fantastic. And all those in favour? Again, unanimous. Thank you very much. Okie doke. So now we're on to item 8, and that is to consider matters relating to the additional financial provision of CCTV.
What's that, number 3?
Oh, in my notes it's been crossed. It's also a big note.
It's
Oh, I didn't.
It's implicit. I apologise. It's implicit in the whole thing, and suddenly realised it was not a necessary resolution.
It's been covered anyway.
Yes.
So yes, so again, item 8, to consider matters relating to the additional financial provision of CCTV.
So following on from the Cleaner Crew project, the Cheshire Crewe Town Council contributes £35,119 a year to CCTV coverage in Crewe, to the service. But as a result of discussions around the Cleaner Crewe project, questions were raised by some members around funding of additional CCTV cameras. We have also this year, through the Brookhouse Drive project and previous projects, looked at CCTV or the potential for additional CCTV coverage to protect the investment and deter antisocial behaviour. For example, Brookhouse Drive, Samuel Street, Maurice has been invested in recently. And the Finance and Governance Committee last week suggested considerations of an earmark reserve to make those additional sorts of investments, particularly the Cleaner Through project. So I've put the two together into this report to cover that request. I have put in an amount that I think might be helpful with some examples of costs for installing cameras. I've also pointed out where investment has been made that we haven't had to make, but it's been instrumental in encouraging. So with Safe Streets funding, allocation of Police and Crime Commissioner funding, which purchased some new cameras for Crew. I've also conversations recently about using some of that funding for another project in the town centre. There's still some budget left. So this will be to cover things where you haven't got funding in place already. And the suggestion now is to create that earmark reserve to a level of £15,000. You may have a different view, but that would be my suggestion to support the Cleaner Through project and Parks CCTV provision.
So, open it up to questions and comments. Hands up.
I read in social media quite recently that Cheshire East Council will be discussing its future level of support for CCTV across the borough. So we've got the sense of the monitoring centre in Matters, which I guess employs about 15 staff in total to ensure year-round 24/7 monitoring. Now that meeting hasn't taken place, but I think it's imminent. In what way can we take that into account? Because we don't know what the outcome of that discussion will be, even if it's in the next couple of days, which I think it is.
So may that's okay.
Please go ahead.
So there is a report, and the recommendation is to look at refocusing and looking at the finances around CCTV provision. There are a few options there, but within that, and I've mentioned it in this report, within that is a consultation with key partners, so that would include the town councils. So when that consultation comes out, I will share it. I have discussed it in principle with the CCTV manager just to understand where they feel this might go, and there may be some reduction in service. That's one of the suggestions, but in terms of operator coverage, but within the hours that they've suggested, that wouldn't necessarily be an issue. It's not ideal, but at the quieter times of day. But at the moment, there seems to be little interest in scrapping the service. It covers too many needs and obligations of Cheshire East Council. So I've included that in the risks. You know, they may decide to cut back the service, but certainly in terms of ability to take more cameras on, technically there is that ability. In terms of modern policing, for example, and detection, I've again had a conversation very recently with the Chief Inspector for Crew, who is happy that they have very good provision now with things like face recognition technology. So if they receive camera footage, they can run that through their technology and post event do the sort of investigation. They don't have to be shouted in live to some events to actually deal with them. They can deal with them in retrospect. So the implications may not be as bad as could be in that system. But at the same time, we're talking about creating an earmark reserve, and if members feel that we can't safely invest at a later point, it is an earmark reserve, it can go back into reserve.
think that's a fair, just a fair comment. There's no doubt, even if it doesn't happen this year, it's going to happen at some point. But it might be amongst the options. I don't think Cheshire East may say, well, who wants to put their hand in their pocket? There'll be another case, particularly given the value that the police appear to get out of it. There's an opportunity there for the police and crime commissioner to get in to do some sort of budgetary vision. So yeah, an earmark reserve makes sense. And we stand by for the day when actually we need to double or treble that or not. Sorry.
Councillor Ward.
No, what I was going to comment was that the money would be well spent on cameras if they've got like night vision. I mean, if you take the Cleaner Crew project, for example, in those areas, I'm sure a lot of the dumping is done at night when we're all asleep or whatever. So if they've not got clear vision of night vision, then you can't identify them, and it's a bit of a waste. I think it's better to have better quality and just in key areas than have cameras that really, if the police can't identify, because going back to what you said, Lindsay, you have to be able to prove, have to go through a process. And so if they're not really clear as to who's going to be, it's a bit of a waste. So I think I would, the earmark reserve is good, but I think the quality of the camera is also important for it to be effective. That's just my take.
So the newest cameras installed are of that quality.
Yeah, well, that's great then if they are, then that's great because it does make a difference. Clearly the old ones haven't really done the job, which is why we're still having this issue. Because if they were, then then that's great in that case because that's important. Yeah, that's fine. I was just clarifying that bit.
Now I appreciate the comment. Thank you. Okay, so looking at the item is basically just a propose to create the earmark reserve to a level of up to £15,000 to support the Cleaner Crew project and Parks East Division. So a proposer for that. Thank you, Councillor. Seconder. Thank you very much. So all those in favour of doing so. Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, so item 9, to consider matters related to the Brookhouse Drive Park improvements.
So, as you know, the Brookhouse Drive project, you've seen plans for that and they've been slightly amended following the last meeting and procurement has gone ahead for supply of the play equipment. So we have a number of elements of the Brookhouse Drive project. One is the play equipment in the formal playground. We then have the equipment on the grassed area. We have a planting scheme, new paths, and a drainage scheme, which is designed to make the ground usable throughout more of the year because it does get quite waterlogged nowadays. So all that's been costed, but further work through the project manager has uncovered that actually we need a substantial survey and assessment before the final drainage scheme is actually designed. That will be carried out by the same contractor who's going to do the work, but it means that they are recommending the best scheme for the site because the drainage can be affected by all sorts of things, the topography, the actual structure of what's in the ground, etc. And there is a hierarchy of what you do with surface water, which I've also put in here for you. Having discussed that with the Environment Agency and United Utilities, and there's a recommended structure of decisions around where to discharge water. The project we envisage requires draining off the land and then into one or maybe a series of pools. Which would be, could be dry for half of the year and could be wet during the heavy rain, and then very slowly that water, if necessary, would then be drained off into the Valley Brook as a preferred route. So the cost of doing that survey it exceeds the scope of the current project. Therefore, I'm asking for approval to allocate some of our existing funds, which are otherwise going to be, we understand, which is within the Ranger service, so it supports in a way what we're doing around maintenance and management of our spaces, for £4,690 to cover the cost of that drainage scheme. In other news, I've now today received some copies of the submissions for the play area equipment, which I haven't had time to look at yet, but I will be circulating that to you all in the next couple of days for your view on the equipment to go into the park.
Thank you. So again, before we have a look at that specifically, anyone got any questions or comments on the drainage survey? No? All good. In that case, then, if I can have a proposer for the budget of £4,690 plus VAT. Thank you, Councillor. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour? Again, unanimous. Okay. And the second part is just to note the report. Happy with that? Great. Okay then, item 10. To consider the draft committee business delivery plan for 2025-26 and considerations sought to include in the delivery plan itself.
So, over the period of the year, we've looked at the budget for the next financial year, which has been approved by council, so that's now fixed. And as per usual, we start to build a delivery plan around that use of budget. So, knowing that we now have an approved budget, there are a few items which I thought it might be useful to suggest within that allocation, just to give us a bit of a head start. We'll cover this again in March, so before the start of the new financial year, and we can consider, or you can consider any further amendments to it. But within the plan so far, there are a few suggestions I would like to include. One of those is in terms of the town centre, to look at a disability audit for the town centre. It's something that's come up through discussions with the Business Improvement District, but also with various community members over a period of years. And that's around things which make it easy or difficult to navigate the town. This is as a disabled person. We have a lot of change going on at the moment. We've got New Southern Gateway, we've got History Centre, we've got the youth zone, people bringing people in through a route through Mill Street into the town centre. And then onwards, we have parking bays, disabled parking bays as an example, up in Salford Street. Yet there isn't an access ramp from Chester Street onto that area for wheelchairs. There isn't a drop curve, and that's just one example. And I see many times people struggling with pushchairs, wheelchairs, just getting on that ramp and taking that route into town. And we've also had comments in the past about the stainless steel seating, that for some people with visual issues, they don't see the stainless steel seating. And I'm sure there are many more, but I'm not an expert. So my suggestion would be that, bearing in mind all the developments we have coming and future decisions about how we want to spend around funding, it would be a good idea to do a disability audit, to commission someone to do that, to advise us on things that would make the town more accessible and suitable for people with disabilities. So that's my first suggestion to include within the delivery plan. The second is around the Clean Through project, bearing in mind investment being made in the resource for that. With the last project, the town council funded weed spraying around the ladder streets where the project was taking place, and that was to enhance the overall public realm and just to help support, because where you get weeds, you get litter. Where you get litter, you get more litter, you get more flight. So I've asked AMSA to cost up additional weed spraying in the cleaner crew designated areas. Plus weed spray that we've already covered in previous years, which is our key gateways, Hungerford Road, Mill Street, Eggleston Road, West Street, or extents of Worcesterston Road. So the key routes into town, in and out, to be improved for our residents and our visitors. So there is a cost in there in the delivery plan now for just over £20,000 to cover that, and I've outlined those areas would be covered by that weed spraying. Our budget for Ranger Resource next year, or for Rangers, includes resource, and that's already named in the delivery plan. So I'm just trying to give a particular number against some of that resource that we don't need for paying Ranger wages. In addition to that, perhaps a little more definition around placemaking budget to allocate to the Royal Arcade site. So that will be brought into a meanwhile used by Cheshire East Council, and in the spring they'll be seeding that area, and they have some budget to allocate to the site. But we might not, or you might not think that that's enough. Therefore, at this stage, without any more detail of exactly what they're proposing to spend money on, and I am having a meeting with them about that to find out what their plans are, you may want to enhance that and say, we need some play space, we need some giant planters, we'd like some art. There may be things that you would like to allocate to that. So just at this point in time, just asking you to consider allocating some of your placemaking budget to the Royal Arcade site. And then the final consideration, which we've actually covered, and it's just to add it to the delivery plan at this point. Should council be happy with the earmark reserve CCTV, that we include that in our earmark reserve in our delivery plan for next year, which means we're just tracking it.
Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll take one at a time, just to break it down. So looking first of all at commissioning of town centre disability audit to identify ways to meet specific needs of accessibility and inclusion. So on that point, opening up for questions and comments.
Well, how much will it cost?
I've had estimates of £6,000 to £8,000.
Are we talking about disabled parking? Is that part of this?
Yeah, I think it would be included. Where is the parking, and is it?
Well,
where is it and is it accessible?
I'd like to put it on the agenda for next month, please, because one in particular is the Lyceum Square. There's 5 disabled parking spaces as far away from the Lyceum as you can get, and there's, I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 spaces next for services. I use that area quite a bit, and I've never seen a service van there or delivery van or whatever it is. Why can't we get them made into more disabled parking? But I'm up to you, Chair. I don't mind putting it on the agenda for next month, unless you give me permission to carry on.
But it's well, on that point there. I mean, if it's part of the disability audit, I was going to ask that. That's
capture that. You have the information around it and the rationale behind.
So, can I carry on, or do you want me to leave it till next month?
in terms of the point, is that no, we can carry.
I'm in your hands. I don't.
Yeah, Bishop.
It's not going to take long.
If you want to just continue to clarify, I was just thinking about the fact in terms of the actual disability audit, we're talking about a general audit of the town and everything in regards to it.
So you go for a walk around the town. when you work out where pavements are dropped or
Right.
anything that is for or against the disabled community being able to access the town.
Right.
Okay, so it's not really specific items. It's having an overview of what needs to be improved in the town area.
Okay.
So that would include more parking
Right.
spaces, wouldn't it?
So
But it's broader than that.
I appreciate it. And as I say, this is just one particular area which I personally use quite a bit. And I've heard so many people complain because there's 5 cars parked and then they have to go somewhere else in the town to park because they want to use the brew cap, for instance. And they come in and they complain like hell. And especially those that know that I'm on the town council, I get quite a lot of hearing, especially about that area, which is, I say, I think it's for delivery, whatever it is. But they keep saying, why can't we have them as? I'd like to bring it up so that we can do something about it.
Well, what we could, I mean, there's a couple of options for I can think of. Is that if it's going to be if parking is part of the overall audit, we can obviously support the commission of the town centre audit, which will include that, and to make sure that there is a point to making sure that those specific areas that we want looking at is part of that audit, and then discuss from the results. We could do it that way. But if you wanted to make it a separate point regarding parking itself, we could always put that into next week's.
In your hands, as I say, I want to
So-
bring it up at some stage because I think it's ridiculous.
In that case, then what we'll do is it's subject to everybody supporting the idea of the audit itself. We can go with the audit to make sure that that is challenged, but in terms of bringing it up as in the next meeting, I think as a topic, as an item.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Castleback.
Definitely support the disability audit. In terms of the scope of it, what is the sort of geographical area that it's going to encompass? Has that been decided yet?
No, I mean, my suggestion is what you'd call the town centre.
Okay. Obviously, we're talking about disabled people coming in by a car and using disabled parking spaces, but some of the questions I get, feedback I get, is people coming into the town on their own transport, like mobility scooters and things. For example, Badger Avenue, where there's areas which are not drop curbs and they're trying to get up and down. Where you've got drop curbs on the crossings, there might be other bits where they can't get up and down. They have to cross the road and go the long way round. So it might be worth just looking at some of the sort of routes into the town which maybe we use regularly. We could consider that perhaps.
Yes.
I think it's an interesting point, the fact that it does open up that wider conversation. I do understand what you're talking about in terms of the town centre, because the centre itself is changing with accessibility where the routes are coming in. For those who do have to navigate challenges when it comes down to disabilities, it's important that we are making sure that the accessibility is changing with it. But I think there is a wider conversation when it comes down to, like you say, the areas that are outside of the town, the neighbourhood areas, the main roads, that kind of thing.
Yeah, places that are not far away, but where people may not actually go in a car to get there because they've got other transport they can use. I don't know whether it's another discussion for another project, maybe.
It does sound like something we could expand on a later date in terms of opening up that conversation.
So if my suggestion would be that if we include it in the delivery plan, I can go and then scope some options and speak to some providers and say, this is what we want to do. The ideal would cover either the whole of the town or these main routes or just the town centre, and get some costs for doing that so that then you can decide how much of your budget you want to allocate, what your priorities would be, to say, let's go for the whole lot and spend £40,000, this the top of my head, or we focus on this smaller area and spend this year. I could come back to you with some options if you would like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very interesting. I mean, I've got a vague recollection from the old days that things like drop curves, to help the disabled people with visual impairments and so forth. It was the sort of thing being the ward councils, borough councils could use some of their hard-earned, ward budgets, which are not that huge, I don't think. Sure, I just hear them. I don't know the figure, but it's a few £1,000s. My other fee wouldn't get many drop curbs. You know, I don't know what the cost is. It's certainly worthwhile finding out. But yeah, it's a good question actually about what area you should focus on. Because you could go far and wide. Every road needs to have drop curbs for people to cross. It's going to cost you an awful lot to cover every main.
Yeah, and I think you may find roads where you're almost there with it, but there's just one bit that they can't get past.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's the whole point of an audit, isn't it? To identify those areas.
Yeah. Which is how much of an audit would get for £6,000 to £8,000.
Yes. Just on a practical basis, if you don't mind. If we have an audit, then you will want to see some improvements delivered as a part of that. There may be some funding opportunities, particularly for the town centre, where that is something we can apply for. So if we get another round of the levelling up type funding, I think there's been talk of an additional round of that. That wouldn't necessarily cover other areas. So you could focus on the town centre to start with, learn from it, understand what the benefits are, whether it's whether we've been able to use it to generate funding, or commenting on planning applications and saying, well, actually our audit pointed out that there was a need for a drop curb there. Please include it in the delivery, or etc. So you could do it that way, but I could come back to a future meeting with some options, an idea of costs and scope, so that you can then decide.
Would it be easier to mark out a geographical area as to what we see as the town centres, i.e. from the bus station down to the library, across the YMCA to the bridge here as the town centre, so that you've got a specific area where you're concentrated on, and anything else then is not included within the town centre.
Yeah.
Without a geographical area for, if you like, Crewe town centre, we could expand it virtually across the whole Crewe.
I can understand, because even when you said that, I would actually go a bit further. What you said, if I was defining the town centre.
Yeah. I think it's actually defined in the local plan. I'll dig that out and include it for you.
That's fine. So
Don't think of mentioning town centre too often. Social media. Anyway.
If we're happy with what we've discussed in terms of going back to the subjects in terms of the rest of the town, and of course looking at the parking more specifically, we can make an item of that one. I just need someone to propose the commissioning of the disability audit on the town centre. Thank you. And seconder? All those in favour? Thank you. Yeah, great. So part 2 is find operational improvement opportunities through support of the Cleaner Crewe project, which is the additional weed spraying via the Ranger Services budget. So to include that, yes.
Just a good question on that. Obviously, I think it's a good idea to try and tackle the weeds in the areas. I'm guessing that's not going to be literally the whole of them. Or is it? Is it £4,000?
So it's just over £20,000. So that's in the areas identified, include Cleaner Crewe area and the additional spraying which we funded in the past.
And in terms of litter, obviously if we're trying to reduce fly tipping and bees on the streets and stuff like that, there's obviously areas which have got a lot of littering and they're not routinely cleaned up. Has there been any consideration into trying to tackle that as well? Because if you're trying to discourage fly tipping and you just got littering all over the birdish and footpaths, it's setting down a message, I think. Obviously we can't litter pick the whole of everywhere, but maybe identify some of the hotspot areas and look at trying to tackle that.
Doesn't the town rangers play a part in terms of keeping certain areas clean?
They do play a part, so they tend to go above and beyond what's regularly done, and they'll tackle an area. But if you're asking for an extra sort of additional service of litter picking,
I don't think anything's routinely done, is it, apart from the town centre? I think everything else is on a reactive way that it works, especially in residential areas.
I just realised, do we actually have a litter picking volunteer group for Crewe? Because I've come across them in another place, but I can't
Oh,
recommend.
clean team.
Clean team.
Oh, yeah.
do.
Do we have any kind of dialogue with them, conversation with them?
Facebook, the
I think it's
a
too much.
group's going
for
to
an
be
organised,
here.
it's too much.
If anybody's interested, come along.
No, I'm not suggesting.
Two of us here, at any rate, and possibly more, are members of the group.
Ah,
James being one of them. They go for a little bit once a month. It can be, but it's from what I can see, it's different areas each month. So you could, they're just one volunteer group,
yes.
and you can't ask for much more. Some individuals go out and decide they're going to pick a particular area. Nantwich Road is one example where there's a volunteer who routinely goes out. There are others who are reported, and you can see it on the Facebook group anyway. But that's the kind of stuff actually that the Cleaner Crewe project should be promoting. I mean, the Cleaner Crewe, the Crewe Clean Team is well established, very well established, but it needs more than that, and people looking after the area where they live,
Exactly.
which is exactly how the Alleyways project was working in Crewe South. And still, in a few of the alleyways, it's still the case, isn't it? So I'm sure there's loads of litter picking one way and another, but it's a bit like weeds that just spring up and disappear.
Yeah. No, it was just what we say about the litter side of it. So, in terms of additional weed spraying, right? The Ranger Services budget, are we need to propose again for make sure it's included?
Yes.
Yeah. Unless anyone has anything else they want to add, I thought we'd go for a propose to add that to the clean project.
I'm just sorry.
Go on.
I'm not really sure, since they have put a firmer control on the type of weed killers we can use, that they are anywhere near as effective enough as they have to be. I mean, they've probably been down the street where I live, and that's all I can speak of, twice in the last 5 years, and nothing dies back. I don't know what it is they're putting on it, but it really isn't enough. And one of the major problems of that is the knock-on effect, and you'll see it around the town in most streets. The gullies, the drains get full of weeds because they're not getting cleared either.
May I answer this?
Please
Yes.
do.
So yes, there are limitations on the sort of strength of weeds, weed killers, etc. that can be used, but the general highways and streets are sprayed once a year by highways. For an effective regime, they need to be sprayed 3 times a year: spring, summer, early autumn, while the weeds are still growing, because they act on contact. They don't stay in the soil. They only act on contact. So you can only kill what's growing and green. And that's only taken up while the weeds are growing. Now, in the areas where we've now had a regime for 2 or 3 years, like the town centre and like those main roads, the weeds are disappearing. So Wisterston Road is the first time that's had a proper spray this year. That was done in the spring and summer and autumn. We sent the rangers out to start raking out, but actually in many areas the weeds have just gone. The wind's blown the shriveled old weeds away and they've gone. And next year there'll be less weeds because there've been less seeds sown, and so it becomes a bit of a virtuous cycle. So in the areas where they're really bad, they've only been sprayed once, and you're a bit of a victim to whether it rains after they've been sprayed or not. So you've only got one chance. So the point of trying to maintain that with a three times a year spray is to get on top of that and hopefully reduce it in future years.
But this is only on the main thoroughfares.
At the moment, it's the main thoroughfares. So my proposal to you would be to also spray those Clean and Crew areas. We've done it around Stallbridge Road, the ladder streets, but since Clean and Crew project started to help that, and this would again it support that project, like just generally improving the area. I mean, had costed cleaning the whole, spraying the whole of True, which would be about £75,000 for 3 sprays in the year. And again, if that's something council has an ambition to do, you can consider it's not within the scope of this budget to do the whole amount, but it is something that could be thought about if that's what council wants to do.
So is that contracted through Cheshire East?
Through ANSA, through their grounds maintenance.
Are we
So
able to
not
look at the
by
third party, see if we can get a better deal with Cheshire East?
we could, but I'm pretty comfortable that you won't get a better price than that. But I can certainly test it. As they are local authority, we can do that sort of contract without going out to tender.
Right.
But at the prices that they've quoted, I'd be very surprised if you would beat it.
I have something. I mean, I'm not even going to ask about weed spraying alleyways. I can remember inquiring about that with the original Clean and Crew project, and I mean, it was fraught with problems because of all the alleyways that were being looked at, out of about 20, only about 3 or 4 were actually clearly adopted. You know, it was provable. So, all I can say, you know, I have no axe to grind on either case, was that there were figures that the Cheshire East Highways, aka Ringway Jacobs, they quoted prices, and I do recall ANSA quoted prices, and the ANSA prices were much keener than the Ringway Jacobs. So I think you're right. Probably, and particularly now since only a few weeks' time, ANSA will go back in house anyway. Probably getting probably a decent deal, but anyway, that's just an opinion. That's not based on science.
Looks like it's not worth looking into.
Are you happy to leave as is?
Yes.
That, yeah.
So
So is it something
what
else?
was that?
Oh, just in terms of obviously whether you wanted to actually move forward the idea of finding other quotes or to leave
No,
that.
I think it's something we'll go
I mean, the one make a lot of viewers. Nobody seemed very anxious to propose this figure. I mean, it's that £20,000 plus that. I just wonder what the view. I wonder what the view of the meeting of people is. Whether they're sort of interested, or sort of leave it, or extend it, or what. Because that's the proposition that's there.
Yes.
For use within this placemaking, whatever, placemaking budget. But it is about half of that budget. That's what I'm. And the other question, because it came to my head, was there was reference to the meanwhile green space in the town centre. Yes, that there, which we've not really come to.
So that's the Royal Arcade site. That would involve the placemaking budget.
Yeah.
The spraying would be under the ranger service.
Yeah.
Because we can't, our rangers, we only have one qualified ranger
Yeah.
that wants spray, so it's much simpler to streamline and the water.
So we're going on to the green space now. What do you want a decision?
Well, I was going to say
on the weed killing.
If we get a decision on the weed, there's a decision on the weed killing first, and I just wanted to sort of.
I'm not convinced for £20,000 you get your money's worth.
Would you prefer it in terms of a yes or no to the project, or is it a case of looking for other costs?
No, it's
Saving.
just that over the years, it's one of those things that you just accept that your street is weedy. because it doesn't seem to get rid of it.
But the point, I think the thing that struck me is what was said was that highways, Ringway Jacobs, do it for a considerable expense, I've no doubt. Once a year, which is inadequate. It does need to be done at least 2 or 3 times a year. And if there's evidence, this is the point. If there is evidence that the weed spraying that's currently done is successful and we know exactly where it is, then it's worth consideration, even if it's not every one of those areas. I mean, we don't have to commit the budget now, but it's the sort of thing that maybe the Cleaner Crew project should be looking at.
To have like a pilot area.
Yeah,
So try it for a
Yeah,
year.
we did it in the pilot.
So are we proposing to replace the existing spraying by highways or to do it on top of what they're doing? Are we proposing to do 3 sprays when they're doing 1? So why do we need to do 3? Can we only do 2 and they pay for the other 1?
So this year, the spray was done in Crewe in August.
So it's too late.
When the weeds were knee high
Okay.
and had already seeded, so it wasn't effective. We would require it to be done in sort of June, July period.
It's almost as if we want to say, well, you don't do it, give us our money back, we'll do it. It's not something we can do.
I like the concept.
You're no good at it, so we'll do it.
Well, so that's really very interesting because if the existing contract, which covers the whole of the borough one way or another, surely is not satisfactory, then presumably Highways and Transport or some appropriate committee in Cheshire should be looking into that. Otherwise, I mean, this is plainly talking about topping up, and that's totally appropriate for town or parish council, isn't it? You know, we're not really satisfied with what is the basic level of service. We want something better, i.e., something that actually works. As a result. Now, if we've got an example, you know, which the success of that already, then it's worth trying out 1 or 2 more, you know, to see how it goes. So, do we have that?
The example?
Yeah.
Yes, so the town centre, you only have to, I can just give you anecdotal evidence. You only have to look at Crewe Town Centre compared to the other towns in the borough. And it is clearer, much clearer of weeds, to the point where there are other town councils now asking ANSA if they can spray their town centres as well. And the same, as I say, if you look at areas such as Westerstone Road, Hungerford Road used to be very high in Mares Taylor by June, July. You might remember, it's not now. I may have before and after photographs, but I think if I was to give you the routes that have been sprayed, and you were to go down those routes and then look where the spraying finishes, like on West Street, or the points at which the spraying stops, and carry on, you'll see the weeds suddenly.
Can you ask them to go and spray my garden?
So there's obviously a lot of conversation about whether we're trying it or not.
What's the contract period? Can we pull out of it if we want to at some point, or are we in it for the long game?
So this year we agreed 3 sprays. If you wanted to agree 1 spray and then decide whether you wanted to continue.
No, I mean, how many years are we giving it? So, in my opinion, it's worth giving it a go.
Yeah, I mean,
we want to be better than the other towns, don't we? We want to actually try and not just say, oh well, it's just like that.
So I take it you're proposing that we give this a whirl.
if it's
I'm
less
happy
than
to
How to approach it?
3 sprays.
Something you said earlier. Something you said earlier about the more you have it, the less weeds we get over a period of time. And to me, it would be silly to stop it now, because with a bit of luck, in the next sort of 2 or 3 years, it should be coming to the stage where we just won't need it. I know that sounds silly, but we might be able to get away with 1 a year because there's hardly any weeds around. I know I might be talking pie in the sky, but we can all hope, can't we?
But the point you also made at the same time was that it kills at the bottom of the growth. It doesn't kill down into the soil.
Oh, it works through the plants, but it only works on that contact, so it doesn't stay in the soil. And it's systemic. So you spray the weed, the plant absorbs it, if you like. It works through it systemically, and it'll get through to the roots, but it doesn't stop weeds growing. Doesn't make it poisonous, because you can't do that anymore. Can't create toxic soil. But if you've killed the weed before it's had a chance to seed, you haven't got that seed landing on the soil to pick up again, or you've reduced the amount. That's why you do it 3 times.
So it's a case of making sure that it's done at the right time.
Yes.
And making sure that whoever it is we're employing to do that is well aware that it has to be done.
Yes.
And has to be finished by a particular date.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Can you get like feedback on actually being done? Do they track where the vehicle goes, or do they go around on a foot
They
bike?
do. They report back to say we've done it, and whenever it's always been done. And in
It
fact,
must have been done because it's working.
yeah, and they will say we're spraying next week. Oh, we'll finish the spray. So
If you spray the plants this week, you also kill the roots. You don't kill anything else about it. You kill the plant and its roots.
Yeah, but the point is
Stop that one from growing.
the point is you've got to do it at the right time to stop the seeds cause.
And
Otherwise,
the regular use is the fact that even if some seeds made it and some seeds grow, you're killing them, which makes even less again, which is why you end up with this disappearing of them, because there's just not enough seeds around. But like, if you went to go back to a year at a time, all will happen is that those areas you stopped at will start to come back that way. So yeah, I can understand completely how that works.
but if you'd like, if you'd like, I can take some photographs of some of the areas that definitely don't get sprayed. And you can look at the ladder streets.
Oh, we've seen it.
yeah.
Seen it in real life.
So I think
I think we just make the decision because we've got another item to do yet.
So
Well, I'm prepared to propose and say this is something to go into a placemaking budget hit. We've already agreed 6 to 8K for the disability audit coordinator for our sake. I'm prepared to propose, I think it'll say 20,000 for weed spraying in those areas that are outlined here. Something of that order. I'm prepared to propose that. It's a 1 year, and we're going to try things like this. Yeah. Certainly when this Clean the Crew project starts, and which will then monitor the effects of these actions. And if they don't work, then we know what to do. So I propose.
okay, so I know you also.
I'll second.
Yeah, that's fine. So all those in favour?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us. Thank you. Right. Okay. So for part 3, supporting projects of placemaking and support developments that reflect the ambition for Crewe through the improvements of the Royal Arcade site. Are we happy to support?
this is in principle at the moment. We
Right.
don't-
In principle, yeah, but that in itself has ongoing costs, which do we take on board or does Cheshire East take on board? Because there's maintenance of the green space, and certainly when we were discussing it at Cheshire East, that was always the stumbling block.
I suppose at this point in time, if you're supportive of the principle of including in the budget for public realm improvements on that area, I can then go into more specific detail with some recommendations about what that looks like. So it could be, and then I'll include in that any implications for maintenance costs.
Yeah.
So would you suggest that there's £48,000 in that placemaking budget, of which we've now agreed 28 in principle?
8. sorry, 20,000 is from the range and service budget for the frame.
All right. All right. Better then. Even better. Yeah, I'll be happy to post something in principle with that and the figure. And see what we come back with.
But just in terms of proposing the idea of supporting the project itself, the committee, is anyone want to second that?
Yeah,
Fine, and everyone, all those in favour? Perfect. And then in part 4, building a sense of safety in the public realm through development of CCTV coverage in Crewe via an earmarked reserve. So again, this is about include this in the delivery plan.
So that's already in the report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy to include that in the delivery plan? Any questions? Great, so again, we need to propose. That's okay, we'll propose for including it.
Yeah.
Yep, and seconding. So all those in favour of including that. Thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Right, so finally, item 11, to note the proposed date of the next meeting, which is Tuesday the 4th of March at 2025 at 6 p.m.